A dream begins with disaster. The morning sky over Chicago hung dark and heavy like a bruised promise. Gemma Holloway stood at her apartment window, watching clouds roll across the skyline like angry waves. She had checked the weather app 3 times already. Light showers, it said. Nothing to worry about. She should have known better than to trust. Technology on the most important day of her life. At 23 years old, Gemma had finally landed her dream job. Ashford Media Group was one of the fastest-growing marketing agencies in the Midwest, known for innovative campaigns and a young, dynamic leadership team. Getting hired as a junior marketing coordinator felt like winning the lottery. Her mother had cried happy tears over the phone. Her roommate Priya had insisted they celebrate with cheap champagne and expensive dreams. Now, standing in her bedroom, Gemma smoothed down the emerald green dress she had chosen specifically for this day. It was professional, but memorable. The kind of outfit that said she belonged in corporate boardrooms while still maintaining her own identity. Her dark curly hair was pinned back neatly, and she had applied just enough makeup to look polished without trying too hard. She grabbed her bag and the small foldable umbrella her grandmother had given her years ago. The thing was ancient, held together by hope and stubborn determination, much like Gemma herself. When fate decides to laugh, the train ride downtown was uneventful. Gemma used the time to review her notes about Ashford Media Group. She had memorized everything she could find about the company's recent campaigns, their client roster, and their leadership team. The CEO, Daniel Ashford, was something of a legend in marketing circles. At only 32, he had transformed his father's struggling advertising firm into a multimedia powerhouse. Business magazines loved writing about him. Some articles focused on his strategic brilliance. Others seemed more interested in the fact that he was unmarried and, according to countless photographs, unfairly handsome. Gemma had rolled her eyes at those articles. She was here to build a career, not to swoon over her boss like some character in a romantic movie. The sky opened up exactly 3 blocks from the Ashford Media building. It was not the light shower promised by her weather app. It was a biblical downpour, the kind that made you question whether someone upstairs had a personal grudge against you. Rain fell in sheets so thick that visibility dropped to almost nothing. Gemma popped open her grandmother's umbrella. For approximately 4 seconds, it held. Then one of the metal ribs snapped with a sound like a tiny bone breaking, and the whole thing collapsed inward like a flower giving up on life. She stood frozen on the sidewalk, rain pouring over her, watching pedestrians sprint past with newspapers over their heads or proper umbrellas that actually functioned. Her dress began clinging to her body. Her carefully styled hair fell flat against her face. Water ran into her eyes, mixing with the mascara she now deeply regretted applying. 3 blocks. She could make it in 3 blocks. Gemma ran, the entrance nobody forgets by. The time she pushed through the revolving doors of Ashford Media Group, Gemma resembled a creature that had crawled from the depths of Lake Michigan. Water pooled around her feet. Her emerald dress, once professional and flattering, now clung to every curve like a second skin. Her shoes made squelching sounds with each step. A small puddle traveled with her across the marble lobby floor. The security guard at the front desk stared at her. With undisguised horror, Gemma approached him, trying to maintain whatever dignity remained, which was approximately none. Water dripped from her nose as she spoke. "My name is Gemma Holloway. Today is my first day. I am supposed to report to the 18th floor for new employee orientation." The guard blinked slowly, clearly processing the disaster standing before him. He checked his computer screen, found her name, and handed her a visitor badge with the kind of careful movements one uses when interacting with potentially dangerous wildlife. The elevator ride up felt endless. Gemma caught her reflection in the polished metal doors and winced. She looked like she had gone swimming fully clothed. The emerald green fabric had turned dark with water. She could feel her undergarments showing through in places that made her want to disappear entirely. The doors opened to a sleek, modern office space. Glass walls revealed meeting rooms filled with people in crisp business attire. Everyone looked successful and dry, and like they had never experienced humiliation in their entire lives. A woman with perfect blonde hair and a tailored gray suit approached her. Her name tag read Rebecca Torres, HR Director. Her expression suggested she was trying very hard not to react to the human swamp thing standing before her. "You must be Gemma. We received a call from the lobby." There was a pause. The weather seems to have been quite unexpected. Understatement of the century, Gemma thought. But she simply nodded and tried to smile. Rebecca led her down a hallway toward a large conference room. Through the glass walls, Gemma could see approximately 15 people seated around an enormous table. They were all looking at presentation slides on a large screen. All of them were perfectly dry. "I apologize," Rebecca whispered, but Mr. Ashford specifically requested that all new hires join the morning strategy meeting. He likes to welcome employees personally. "I cannot delay your introduction." Gemma wanted to protest. She wanted to run to a bathroom and attempt some form of emergency restoration. She wanted to wake up from this nightmare instead. Rebecca opened the door. The room falls silent. Every head turned as Gemma stepped inside. Rainwater continued dripping from her dress, creating a small trail of droplets across the expensive carpet. The conference room fell completely silent. Someone in the corner actually gasped. At the head of the table sat a man Gemma immediately recognized from countless magazine photographs. Daniel Ashford looked exactly like his pictures suggested, tall even while seated, with dark hair slightly longer than corporate standard and eyes the color of coffee without cream. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. Those dark eyes locked onto Gemma, traveling from her soaked hair down to her waterlogged shoes and back up again. She felt her face burn with embarrassment. This was it. This was how her dream job ended, before it even truly began. Daniel Ashford stood up. "Everyone," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the room, "I need you to leave now." The silence became somehow deeper. People exchanged confused glances. A man who appeared to be a senior executive opened his mouth to protest Kevin. Daniel interrupted, looking at the man. "This meeting is postponed. Take everyone to the secondary conference room on 16. I will join you in 20 minutes, but the quarterly review." Kevin started. 20 minutes, Daniel repeated, and there was steel beneath the polite tone, one by one. People gathered their things and filed out. They walked past Gemma, some avoiding eye contact, others staring openly at her dripping form. She heard whispered comments that made her want to sink through the floor. Within 2 minutes, the room was empty except for Gemma and Daniel Ashford. He walked toward her, and she noticed he was carrying something. Jacket. His own suit jacket, she realized, as he gently draped it over her shoulders. The fabric was warm and smelled faintly of expensive cologne. "There is a private bathroom through that door," he said quietly, pointing toward the back of the conference room. "You will find towels and a hairdryer. Take whatever time you need." Gemma stared at him, shocked into silence. This was not what she had expected. The legendary CEO, known for his demanding standards and sharp business mind, was covering her with his own jacket and speaking to her like she was a person rather than a problem. "Mr. Ashford," she finally managed, "I am so sorry. I can explain. My umbrella broke and the weather was supposed to be light showers, and I know this looks terrible, and I completely understand if you want to reconsider." He held up a hand. "Stopping her rambling, Miss Holloway," he said, and she was surprised he knew her name without checking any paperwork. Everyone has difficult days. What matters is that you showed up despite the obstacle. That tells me more about your character than any interview ever could. He smiled then. Something in Gemma's chest did a strange flutter that she immediately chose to ignore. Get dried off. "Join us when you are ready. Nobody will mention this again. I will make sure of it." He turned and walked toward the door, then paused. "And Miss Holloway? Welcome to Ashford Media Group. I have a feeling you are going to do remarkable things here." Then he was gone. And Gemma stood alone in the empty conference room, wrapped in his jacket, wondering what exactly had just happened, and why her heart was beating so ridiculously fast. She found the bathroom exactly where he said it would be. As she dried her hair and tried to salvage her appearance, one thought kept circling through her mind. Daniel Ashford had cleared an entire room of senior executives to protect her from embarrassment on her first day. He had given her his own jacket without hesitation. He had spoken to her with kindness when he could have dismissed her as a disaster. The magazines had gotten one thing right. He was indeed unfairly handsome, but they had failed to mention something far more important. He was also unexpectedly kind, and that, Gemma suspected, was going to be far more dangerous to her carefully planned career than any rainstorm could ever be. The whispers began 3 weeks past since that disastrous first morning, and Gemma had worked harder than she ever had in her life. She arrived before everyone else and left after most had gone home. She studied every campaign, memorized client histories, and volunteered for projects that others avoided. The embarrassment of her entrance had faded somewhat. True to his word, Daniel Ashford had apparently made it clear that the incident was not to be discussed. Most people treated her normally. A few even seemed impressed that she had handled the situation with grace, but not everyone had. Forgotten. Gemma noticed the looks from certain colleagues. Small glances exchanged when she walked past. Conversations that stopped suddenly when she approached the break room. She told herself it was paranoia. The natural anxiety of being new in a competitive environment. Her direct supervisor, Kevin Walsh, was one of the ones who watched her most closely. He was a tall man with thinning hair and the perpetual expression of someone who had just bitten into a lemon. During meetings, his eyes would narrow whenever she spoke. He questioned her ideas more aggressively than anyone else's. He assigned her the tedious tasks that others refused. Kevin was here before Daniel took over. Priya told her one evening over dinner at their apartment. He thought he would become CEO when the old man retired. Then Daniel came in with his fancy degree and modern ideas, and Kevin got passed over. He has been bitter ever since. That explains a lot, Gemma said, pushing rice around her plate. Just stay out of his way, Priya advised. Do your work, keep your head down, and wait for opportunities with other managers. But opportunities had a strange way of finding Gemma whether she sought them or not. Late nights and unexpected conversations. It started with the Henderson account. Henderson Furniture was a family-owned company trying to rebrand for younger customers. They had been with Ashford Media for 15 years, but were threatening to leave unless the agency could deliver something fresh. Kevin's team had presented 3 different campaign concepts. All 3 had been rejected. Gemma had ideas. She always had ideas. Usually she kept them to herself, scribbling notes in the margins of her planner, knowing that junior coordinators were not supposed to speak unless spoken to. But something about the Henderson problem kept nagging at her. One Thursday evening, she stayed late to finish a report. The office had emptied hours ago. She sat at her desk in the dim lighting, surrounded by printouts of Henderson's previous campaigns and demographic research. That is a lot of paper for someone at your level. Gemma jumped so hard she nearly fell out of her chair. Daniel Ashford stood a few feet away, holding a coffee mug and wearing a slightly amused expression. His tie was loosened and his sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms that Gemma absolutely did not notice. Mr. Ashford, she stammered, standing up quickly and scattering papers everywhere. I was just finishing some research. I will clean up immediately. Relax, he said, moving closer to examine the documents spread across her desk. What exactly are you researching? She hesitated. The smart thing would be to make an excuse and leave. The professional thing would be to defer to her superiors. But Daniel was looking at her with genuine curiosity, and something in his expression made her want to be honest. Henderson Furniture, she admitted. I know it is not my project, but I had some thoughts. Daniel picked up one of her annotated printouts. His eyebrows rose as he read her scribbled notes. Tell me, he said simply. So she did. For the next hour, Gemma explained her analysis. Henderson was trying to appeal to millennials, but their approach was all wrong. They were using trendy language and flashy visuals that felt desperate and inauthentic. What they needed was to embrace their heritage while demonstrating relevance. Family history is a selling point, not something to hide. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Why did you not bring this to Kevin? Gemma chose her words carefully. I am new. I did not want to overstep. Daniel set down the printout and looked at her directly. Miss Holloway, I did not hire you to be quiet. I hired you because your application showed creative thinking. If you have ideas, I expect you to share them. He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. Just sent you a meeting invite for tomorrow morning. You are going to present these concepts to the Henderson team. Kevin will be there, but this will be your presentation. Gemma felt her mouth fall open. Mr. Ashford, I cannot just take over a senior project. You are not taking over anything, he corrected. You are offering a fresh perspective. If Henderson likes it, Kevin's team will handle implementation. Everyone wins. He started walking toward the elevator, then paused and Miss Holloway. When we are alone, you can call me Daniel. Then he was gone, and Gemma stood in the empty office, wondering if she had just made the best decision of her career or the worst. Success and its consequences. The Henderson presentation went better than Gemma could have imagined. The clients loved her concept. They loved the emphasis on family legacy. They loved the tagline she had created, built to last. Styled for tomorrow, by the end of the meeting, Henderson had not only decided to stay with Ashford Media but had increased their budget by 30%. Kevin sat through the entire presentation with his jaw clenched so tight that Gemma worried he might crack a tooth. Afterward, he congratulated her in front of the clients with a smile that never reached his eyes. The weeks that followed brought more late nights at the office. Daniel, she still struggled to call him that, seemed to work even later than she did. Their paths crossed frequently. Coffee runs turned into conversations. Conversations turned into debates about marketing theory, about industry trends, about life outside the office walls. Gemma learned that Daniel had taken over the company after his father's heart attack. Abandoning his own plans to save the family business, she learned that he felt the weight of every employee's livelihood on his shoulders. She learned that beneath the confident CEO exterior was a man who sometimes doubted whether he was doing enough. In return, she told him about growing up in a small town, about her mother working 2 jobs to support her dreams, about her fear that she would never be good enough to deserve the chances she had been given. They never crossed any lines. They never touched except for professional handshakes. But something was building between them, something neither of them acknowledged, but both of them felt. The whispers grew louder. The trap. Isejima first noticed the problems when her computer started glitching. Files disappeared. Emails vanished. Reports she was certain she had saved showed up blank. The IT department found nothing wrong. Then came the meeting she missed. She had never received the invitation, yet everyone insisted it had been sent. She looked unprepared and unreliable in front of important clients. Small things kept going wrong. Her name misspelled on official documents. Her parking space reassigned without notice. A performance review that contained criticisms she had never received before. Someone is sabotaging you, Priya said bluntly, when Gemma came home frustrated for the 3rd time that week. This is not coincidence. I cannot prove anything, Gemma replied. Everything could be explained as honest mistakes. Then find proof. Gemma tried. She started documenting everything, saving copies of emails to her personal account, taking screenshots of her calendar. But whoever was working against her was careful. There were no obvious fingerprints. The final blow came on a Friday afternoon. Gemma was called into Rebecca Torres's office. The HR director's expression was somber. Gemma, we have received a serious complaint. Accusations have been made that you have been engaging in an inappropriate relationship with Mr. Ashford to advance your career. Gemma felt the blood drain from her face. That is absolutely not true. Rebecca held up a hand. There are also allegations that you have been taking credit for other people's work, that the Henderson campaign concepts were actually developed by Kevin Walsh and his team. No, Gemma protested, her voice rising. I can prove those were my ideas. I have the original documents. Unfortunately, an investigation has been opened. Until it is resolved, you are being placed on administrative leave. The room spun around her. This could not be happening. Everything she had worked for was crumbling. Rebecca, please, Gemma said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Someone is trying to destroy me. I do not know why, but this is a setup. Rebecca's expression softened slightly. Gemma, I am not the one making these decisions. The complaint came from multiple sources. My hands are tied. As Gemma walked out of the office, she passed Kevin Walsh in the hallway. He smiled at her, a cold, satisfied smile that told her everything she needed to know. She just could not prove it yet. Allies in unexpected places, Gemma sat in her apartment for 3 days, barely eating, unable to sleep. Her phone rang constantly, but she could not bring herself to answer. What would she say? How could she explain? On the 4th day, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Natalie Cross, Daniel's executive assistant, standing in the hallway. The older woman had never spoken more than a few words to Gemma before. May I come in? Gemma stepped aside, too surprised to refuse. Natalie sat on the couch and placed a folder on the coffee table. Kevin Walsh is a snake, she said without preamble. He's been waiting for an opportunity like this for years. When he saw how Daniel looked at you, he knew exactly how to strike. Gemma stared at her. You believe me? I have worked for Daniel for 8 years. I know him better than anyone. Natalie's eyes were fierce. He is a good man, an honorable man. And what you two have, whatever it is or might become, is genuine. Kevin cannot stand that Daniel found happiness while Kevin's own career stand us. She pushed the folder toward Gemma. I did some digging. Kevin has been accessing your computer remotely through a program he installed on your first week. He deleted your emails. He edited your calendar. He copied your Henderson files and backdated his own versions to make it look like he created them first. Gemma opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were screenshots, system logs, timestamps that clearly showed Kevin's manipulation. How did you get this? I have friends in IT who owe me favors, Natalie said with a small smile. Kevin thought he was clever, but he underestimated how many people in this company actually care about what is right. Tears welled in Gemma's eyes. Thank you. I do not understand why you would risk yourself for me. Natalie stood and smoothed her skirt. Because Daniel has been alone for too long? Because this company needs people like you who actually care about the work? And because Kevin Walsh once tried to take credit for my ideas too, about 5 years ago? Consider this my delayed revenge. At the door, she paused. Daniel has been fighting for you, you know. He cannot contact you directly during the investigation. But he has been tearing the company apart, trying to prove your innocence. He has barely slept. Something warm bloomed in Gemma's chest despite everything. The board meeting is tomorrow morning, Natalie continued. Kevin will present his version of events. Unless someone presents evidence to the contrary, she met Gemma's eyes meaningfully. 9 o'clock sharp. Do not be late. The confrontation in the Ashford Media boardroom was filled with the company's most powerful people. Board members in expensive suits, department heads with decades of experience. Kevin Walsh sat at one end of the table, looking supremely confident. Daniel Ashford sat at the head, his face carefully neutral, though Gemma noticed the dark circles under his eyes. When she walked through the door, every head turned. Miss Holloway, one of the board members said sharply, you are supposed to be on administrative leave. You cannot be here, actually, Gemma said, her voice steadier than she felt. I have evidence relevant to this investigation. Evidence that clears my name and exposes the real wrongdoing. Kevin's confident expression flickered. This is highly irregular. She should be removed. Let her speak, Daniel said quietly, and something in his tone left no room for argument. Gemma walked to the presentation screen and connected her laptop. For the next 20 minutes, she laid out everything. The system logs showing Kevin's remote access to her computer. The timestamps proving her Henderson files predated his bi-weeks. The pattern of sabotage that could be traced back to one source. The room grew increasingly silent as the evidence accumulated. This is fabricated, Kevin sputtered, his face reddening. She created these documents to frame me. Then perhaps you can explain, Gemma said calmly, pulling up one final document. Why your computer shows you accessed the building security system last month and deleted footage from the nights I stayed late working. Footage that would have shown I was alone in the office developing concepts. You claim are yours? Kevin opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Or perhaps, she continued. You can explain why 3 other junior employees have come forward in the past 24 hours with similar stories? Did you really think you were the only one Natalie would contact? The boardroom erupted. Multiple voices spoke at once. Kevin stood up, then sat down, then stood again, looking like a trapped animal. Through it all, Gemma kept her eyes on Daniel. He was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. Pride, certainly, relief, and something deeper. Something that made her heart race despite the chaos around them. This meeting is adjourned. The board chairman announced. Mr. Walsh, please remain. Everyone else, out. As Gemma walked toward the door, Daniel caught her arm gently. My office, I said quietly. Please. What really matters, Daniel's office was silent after he closed the door. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. They stood facing each other, the air between them charged with everything unspoken. Daniel began, then stopped. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had come to recognize as a sign of deep emotion. These past few days have been unbearable. Knowing someone was hurting you, knowing I could not help directly, you did help, she said softly. Natalie told me how hard you fought. Not hard enough. He stepped closer. When I saw you walk into that boardroom today, so strong, so determined, I realized something. What? That I have been a coward. He took her hands in his touch gentle but certain. I told myself that what I felt for you was inappropriate, that I should maintain distance because of our positions. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what? Gemma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Afraid of how much you matter to me. Afraid that if I let myself care, I might lose you. And then I almost did lose you, and I realized that keeping my distance did not protect either of us. It just wasted time. Gemma felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Daniel, I do not want your career or reputation to suffer because of me. He cupped her face in his hands, wiping her tears with his thumbs. My reputation means nothing if I cannot be honest about who I am and what I want. And what I want is you, Gemma, not as an employee, not as a colleague, but as someone I can build a future with. She laughed through her tears. This is highly irregular, Mr. Ashford. Then it is a good thing I am the CEO, he said, smiling. I can make the rules. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. So what happens now? Gemma asked. Now, Daniel said, we do this properly. Full disclosure to HR. New reporting structures, so there is no conflict of interest. And most importantly, he pulled her closer. Dinner tonight. A proper date. No work talk allowed. Gemma pretended to consider. I suppose I could fit you into my schedule, he laughed. And the sound filled her heart with warmth. 6 months later, Gemma stood at the window of her new office, watching rain fall over Chicago. The weather app had predicted sunshine today. Some things never changed, but so much else had. Kevin Walsh was gone, his termination followed by a lawsuit the company easily won. The employees he had mistreated over the years had all come forward once. They knew they would be believed. Gemma had been promoted twice. Her work on the Henderson account had led to a complete company rebranding that won industry awards. She now led her own creative team, mentoring junior employees the way she wished someone had mentored her and Daniel. He was no longer just her CEO, he was her partner, her best friend, her home. They had done everything properly, just as he promised. Full transparency, professional boundaries during work hours, and a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine love. A knock at her door made her turn. Daniel stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing a smile that still made her heart skip. Ready for the meeting? He asked Alma. She crossed to him and accepted her coffee. But first, she kissed him softly, then pulled back with a grin. Now I am ready. As they walked to the conference room together, Gemma caught their reflection in the glass walls. A young woman who had once stumbled into this building soaking wet and terrified, now confident and successful. A man who had once hidden behind his position, now open and happy. Sometimes, she reflected, the worst days lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes you have to get caught in the storm before you can find where you belong, and sometimes, the person who clears the room so you can dry off turns out to be the person who changes your life forever. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Gemma smiled and kept walking.